This is by far the weirdest way that I have ever started an interview. Kate, where are you in your menstrual cycle?
So one of the things that I teach is how to organize our lives according to our cycles as women. And when a woman has her period, she is the most connected to her inner wisdom, to her power that she is at any other time of the month.
Right? You wrote a book called Money, a Love Story. Why did you write this book?
The world of personal finance felt very shame-based. I created my own approach to have a better relationship with money, and the missing ingredient in all the places I had looked was really the ingredient of love, specifically self-love.
One of the things that women are experiencing is burnout. What do you say to those people who are starting to wonder whether all of this effort is worth it?
If we don't find ways to fill ourselves up along the way, all the grind and sacrifice and hustle is not worth it.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have the wonderful Kate Northrup. Hi, Kate. Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to break the ice real quick. I just want you to tell me what your favorite TV show or podcast that you're obsessed with is right now.
Oh, right now I'm watching Loot on Apple TV with I think Maya Rudolph.
Yeah.
She's a billionaire giving away all her money. It's hilarious. It's very well written.
Awesome. I'm going to be checking that out next.
Yeah.
So first I need to say just congratulations on everything that you have built, you've been publishing books, you've been putting yourself out there, you have created an empire that makes women feel heard, that helps women be more productive by doing less. Like this is actual like impact that you're having in so many lives out there. And I just wanted you to hear congratulations, because you've done an amazing job over a lot of years, and I'm sure it was a lot of effort. There were sacrifices, and I just wanted to tell you thank you on behalf of your loving audience that adores you. We all know what you have done, and we just wanted to say congratulations for all your success.
Thank you.
So my next question is, how do you feel about that success? What is your relationship with success right now?
My relationship with success right now, I think that the feeling of being successful for me is rooted less in my career than it is in the other aspects of my life. And back in the day, I cannot remember who it was who said this, but I was listening to a podcast called I Love Marketing many, many, many years ago. I was doing this fitness program, getting in shape for my wedding. And every day when I would work out, I would listen to the I Love Marketing podcast. And they talked about having a success list, which was like, I know I'm being successful when, whatever the list was. One of the things for me is when I don't have to set an alarm, when I'm feeling really connected to my husband, when I'm laughing a lot and snuggling with my kids, when I'm taking care of my body, when I'm taking time to sit in the sunshine, when I'm like chewing slowly, sleeping well, having really good heart-to-heart connections with my girlfriends. So that's my relationship with success. I think I love my work so much. I cannot imagine ever a time when I won't do it. So part of that also is I'm doing work that I love, but I don't really think about success in terms of, I mean, yes, of course, like making a certain amount of money or having a certain impact for sure, but those are only some of the things on the list as opposed to like the marker. Because the tricky thing about the idea of success is so often our idea of success has been defined by someone else. And if it's been defined by someone else, the feeling of success can also be taken away. And the things that are on my success list are things that I have control over.
Yeah. One of the things that women are experiencing, well, women and men, anybody is experiencing with success is burnout is a thing. Burnout is an epidemic that is going and killing dreams and killing businesses. And when there are people who are listening who have a single idea of what success looks like, and they are burning themselves out trying to get there. What do you say to those people who are starting to wonder whether all of this effort and time and grind that they're putting into something is worth it?
If we don't find ways to fill ourselves up along the way, all the grind and sacrifice and hustle is not worth it. Because if you think that everything's going to be better when, like on the other side of a certain amount of income or a certain number of followers or a certain whatever, if you think like, when I get to XYZ external measure of success, then I will feel XYZ, you will never feel the way you think you're going to feel when you get to that goal if you didn't give yourself permission to feel good along the way. Mm-hmm. So my answer would be, it is not worth it if you are sacrificing your well-being along the way. It's not going to be different later.
And this is going to get us into our topic for today, because this is by far the weirdest way that I have ever started an interview. Kate, where are you in your menstrual cycle, and how is that informing how you spent this week? Please tell us more.
I'm on day 10. So day 10, which means I'm in the follicular phase, heading into ovulation within a couple of days. So when we're in our, as you know, obviously this is why you asked this question. One of the things that I teach is how to organize our lives and change our relationship with work according to our cycles as women. And if you're somebody who doesn't have a cycle and you still want to play, you can use the moon. Right. I get this question all the time. I'm in perimenopause. I'm, had a hysterectomy. I'm menopausal. I'm a man. I'm, whatever. Like, can I do it? Yes, you can. You can use the moon. But each phase of our cycle has a particular energy and a hormonal signature that primes us for being a particular way. And it actually is our superpower when we know how to use it and follow it. And so in the phase that I'm in the follicular phase, estrogen is on the rise. There is a general feeling of well-being, high energy, creativity. It's a great time to get started on things. It's a great time to initiate new projects, to plan, to put things in place, to move forward on new things. And then heading into ovulation. Ovulation is the time when our pheromones are the highest. We're our most fertile literally, but also our most fertile energetically. Mm-hmm. It's a really good time for cross-pollination, for having conversations like this, for being visible, for going out, sending pitches, sales, discovery calls, all sorts of things like that. And that, for each person, of course, it varies what day happens when, and that has to do with different things going on in our body. But the way we know when we've ovulated is there's a dramatic spike in our temperature that then stays that way for a while. So I wear my Oura Ring and I use the Natural Cycles app, and it just shows me exactly what day that is.
So this is a concept that I knew absolutely nothing about until I heard you talk about it on stage at a conference several years ago. And then after reading your book, I realized for the first time that your mother is an OBGYN, right? And she already had this kind of background like on you. I would love to know where this idea for the book came from, and was your mother an influence in you caring about this topic?
It's so funny. Being raised by a gynecologist is interesting. I have like way more information than most people. So actually Susie, who just left, she was like, I call you like you're my doctor. I was like, I have an art history degree. But yes, this understanding of the inner workings of the body is something I grew up with, and I've always been fascinated by it. But the cycle aspect and that kind of like feminine energy piece, I was super not interested in it. When I got my period, it was like the worst day of my life. I told my mom, and my mom, wanted to like have a ceremony, do a ritual, and like do a blessing. And I was like, Mom, if you do not invite your friends over, do not bless me. We're not sitting in a circle. Like there's not going to be a flower crown. I was not interested. And quite frankly, even though I knew about cyclical planning and cyclical alignment, because My mom wrote about it in her first book in 1994. So, like,
Right.
she was absolutely one of the pioneers to start teaching women how to do this. But I just wasn't interested. I was like, I'm too busy for that. I have too much going on. I can't adjust my life according to my cycle. That's so weird.
Right.
So, for anyone listening who feels that way, I feel you. It's okay. You know, like, we come to things when we need to come to them. And then I had my first daughter, and it was the first time in my life that I had an experience. I was so tired during that pregnancy. I felt incapacitated. And then when she was born, she was really sick. I struggled so hard, so much with postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, postpartum insomnia, which was like the worst thing ever when I was so dead tired, but I could not sleep. The level of anxiety in my body was so intense. And I had never had an experience in my life that I couldn't overcome by just being smarter or working harder.
Right.
And neither of those strategies were working. I was like brought to my knees by the experience of motherhood. And then when my daughter was 13 months old, my period came back. And all of a sudden, so I also, I mentioned I was doing that fitness program before my wedding. I got so fit that, well, quote unquote fit, we could debate about whether that was true. I lost my period. So I didn't have my period for a long time. Then I had it one time, then I got pregnant, then I didn't have it for a long time again. So it had been years.
Right.
And so all of a sudden I was like, wow, it felt like when I got my period back after my daughter, it felt like this sign of a return of capacity, because physiologically, when a woman gets her cycle back after she's had a baby, it actually is an indication. You know, the menstrual cycle really should be our fifth vital sign for women. And it is an indication that there is enough reserves of resources for that cycle to return. So it's actually a real sign of well-being.
Right.
And so for me, I could feel this return to myself, like after having spent so much time growing a baby and then feeding a baby and devoting my life to this baby, which of course I still do. That baby is now 8.5. I got a piece of me back.
Yeah.
And I got so fascinated. I felt like this return to myself in a way I had never experienced before. So I started researching the menstrual cycle for the first time in my life at the age of 32. I was like, and you should have heard me with my girlfriends. I would be sitting down with them at dinner and be like, you guys, did you know? And like, I was telling them everything. I'm like, and the estrogen and the progesterone. And did you know you're more magnetic at this time? And if you do, and I started tracking my cycle for the first time. And the biggest thing was my anxiety went away. And that was such an incredible revelation. And so what I realized is I had been looking for something that I could depend on, and I had been looking for something predictable in the external world, but my whole life had been turned upside down by motherhood and by having a sick child. And I felt so profoundly out of control, and there was nothing I felt like I could depend on externally. And so my own cyclical nature that was incredibly predictable was actually that thing I really needed for a sense of safety and security. And then it also helped me be way more productive in a way that felt in flow with who I am, as opposed to pushing up against who I am.
Can I ask you something? Because it seems like, as women, we have had a cycle since the beginning of time. Why isn't this something that is more mainstream? What is stopping this information from getting out, from being normal in our lives?
We are definitely, like, I will just say, I think periods are having a moment. I see it. I mean, maybe it's just my industry, but I'm like, oh my God, everyone's talking about it. This is great. Like, it's in Cosmo. Susie just texted me the other day. She's like, oh my God, they're talking about cycle syncing in Cosmo. You should pitch them and do a follow-up. Like, it's way, way more mainstream than it was in 1994 when my mom started talking about this. But I will tell you why. The menstrual cycle is responsible for human life. It is incredibly powerful. And when a woman has her period, she is the most connected to her inner wisdom, to her power, that she is at any other time of the month. And of course, through various religious traditions and other cultural traditions, we have been taught that women are dirty at that time and that we should be afraid of them. But that is just because we're brainwashed to try to be afraid of and avoid and tear down the things that are the most powerful and potent. So the reason it's not in the mainstream is just because we have been trying to remove women's power for centuries. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is to condition women to believe that there's something wrong with their bodies, specifically something wrong with the very thing that is the reason we're all here.
Yeah, and it's still, even in this day and age, I consider my husband to be a, progressive person for women, right? Which is great.
He's a feminist.
He's right, but
Great.
he cannot stand even the mention of a woman's period. And once I started to notice that, because it's not like I talk about my period every day, right? I started to notice my husband just cringe a little bit whenever I would mention. I'm like, oh, that's the house that I'm living in, that my children are living in, that this is the
girls?
reaction. I have 2 boys,
Oh,
even
okay.
more.
Uh-huh.
So I decided to take it upon myself to teach he was then like 10 years old, he's 12 now, my 10-year-old about the women's cycle. And we were on a plane. My husband was not there. I'm like, opportunity. Sat him down and I told him, women have this many orifices down there, not as few as you thought there were.
Amazing.
And this
That's
is what
going to set him up for success later on.
And he's like this.
He was 12 at the time, or
he was
10?
10 at the time. And I'm like,
Wow.
Don't worry. I'm going to keep refreshing these concepts every year. We're going to talk about this again. And my son is
Don't worry, this won't be the last
I'm
time.
like, he's like, no. And
Hilarious.
I told my husband, just so you know, I did that.
Uh-huh.
And I am going to continue to do that because it's really important for men to also understand.
It is where we all came from.
It's anatomy.
And so, like, it's anatomy, but you know what? It's more than that. Your son and your husband. I mean, my girlfriend, oh my God, I don't remember who said this. It was my girlfriend, or maybe I read it somewhere. I'm not sure. But she was like, it wasn't until I gave birth and literally saw a penis coming out of my vagina that I realized the power of women. Like, as she gave birth to her son, she was like, holy shit, like, I can't, like, every penis came out of the vagina or a belly, if in the case of but so, like, what's really important about this that I want to mention, and I don't really know if this will freak people out on your show, but you can edit it out.
I think we're way beyond that point. Let's just go for it.
The thing is that, like, what we are talking about, the menstrual cycle, the way women's bodies work, is the origin of our species. It is where we all came from. How sad. How sad that we've been conditioned to think it's gross and terrifying. And I think that that's just an indication of how disconnected we are from the divine, and how organized religion in many ways has gotten it confused and disconnected us from our power, which to me is our connection to God or the universe or source or life, whatever you want to call it. But to our connection to that which is greater than each of our own individual human personalities. Yeah. And so that's really what we're talking about here. I mean, yes, like learning anatomy is super important, and it's a really important step. It's a really important step, and I commend you. I love that you're having those conversations with your boys. It's going to really help them on a lot of levels.
Yeah. And for my husband, I just started mentioning a little bit more often when I do have my period. And he's just going to have to get used to it. And at my house, we buy, bathroom wipes. And my husband's like, why are we going through so many wipes? Because I bleed out of my hoo-ha every month, and I need them multiple times a day. Are we clear now? Like, why is this news? Yeah. We've been together for 21 years. Yeah. So thank you for bringing this to our awareness. And I'm going to tell you something that I did too. So I keep a journal every day, and I write down every night a good thing and a bad thing that happened today. Just to kind of keep like that thermometer going every day. I write the date, I write the day of the week, and I write which day of my cycle I'm on.
Yeah.
It started out just pure, I just want to know. I need to know. Personally, I have never been on birth control. Fertility awareness has been my birth control. So I need to know which day I'm in my cycle. It's just a normal thing for me to know. And after reading your book, I went back to my journal to see if I could draw some parallels between the good and the bad and the day of the month and the moon cycle. So I just took like 1 month. I'm just gonna just see what's up.
Yeah.
And this is what I found. And I wanted to run it by you. Is it okay if I run a couple things?
Of course.
So I noticed, okay, my cycle started around the end of the full moon. And you mentioned in your book, like, normally like women will start to align themselves around the full moon or the new moon, right?
It's common.
Right. And the more awareness you have, the more your body's going to start to actually fine tune itself to those dates, which I thought was fascinating. So when the new moon came along, I was writing down that I had the most chill day. That I lie down in my hammock. I wasn't sweating anything stressful. I'm like, oh, that's nice, because I don't do that every day. I'm not describing a normal day for me. I don't go and lie in my hammock every day. So I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. And can you please tell everybody a little bit of what the new moon represents?
Yeah. So the new moon is the time of the beginning of a fresh lunar cycle. We have 13 lunar cycles in the year, which is why the number 13 is actually a sacred number. Just one more example of the way we've been brainwashed to take away the power of things. We've been taught that the number 13 is unlucky. It's actually like a very sacred and important number because it's the number of lunar cycles in the year. So the new moon is about new beginnings. It's about turning within. So when the night is the darkest, we can see the most clearly inside. So it's about connecting with our intuition, rest, reflection, restoration, and it is really the stillness. It is the still point of the cycle to go inside and really ask, what would be the best use of my creative energy in this upcoming lunar cycle? And it is the same energy as the first day that you bleed. So it's not like you're doing it wrong if you don't get your period on the new moon, just to be super clear. But energetically, those days are similar. So sometimes they might line up, and that's wonderful, but they don't need to in order for them to be powerful.
Let me tell you about the next phase. It was a waxing moon, the one that I was tracking. The next step was waxing. And my kids went all sorts of crazy. But I came up with my very first, like, highest ticket offer that I've ever done in a while. So what is that phase, the waxing moon?
So the waxing moon is the same as the follicular phase, which I already described. It is the time between when the moon is nothing, is new moon, dark moon, and then the time when the moon is full. So that mid-range is the waxing moon. And so it is the time, like, if so biodynamic farming is an entire practice of farming and planting seeds and vegetables in concert with the lunar cycles, and you get like way bigger carrots, and it's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, if it works for carrots, it works for humans. So what we know is that when seeds are planted, so this is a whole, the metaphor. Now I'm not talking about carrots, but literally, but metaphorically speaking, we plant seeds at the new moon, or we plant seeds at the first day of our cycle. And then the waxing phase is when those seeds begin to blossom, when those seeds begin to sprout, take root, and become something. So we might set an intention at the new moon and say, like, okay, this lunar cycle, my focus is my offering suite, and like really getting clear on my offering suite. So then at that waxing phase would be a time when you might get those sorts of ideas. You might get those insights that become visible as the moon is becoming visible itself.
Why were my kids going nuts? Like, this is something I was looking at.
I don't
I'm
know,
like,
maybe they had too much sugar.
Why were my kids going crazy?
that I don't know.
So
now, I will say my kids go crazy at the full moon.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and also for any other number of reasons that have nothing to do with the moon.
So for the full moon, I'm going to tell you, that's when I started to take action on some really big ideas, like doing this in-person podcast came around the full moon. And also, it was a day when I couldn't even sleep because there was something really bothering me about something that was happening. And you can see like my writing being kind of neater on the days before, and then the full moon hit. But I did not know it was a full moon. I did not keep
You just
track of
looked
the moon.
backwards, yeah.
I'm just looking back. Like on the day of a full moon, like my writing is like I could only write like 3 sentences that were all really scribbled, like something is happening to me,
Wow.
basically. But that's when I started to take action on ideas, created a whole ton of content, and made like $15,000 in a single day. It was like everything that I've been working for just in steroids just around that time. What is happening in the
So
full moon?
the full moon is when the night is the brightest, and it really shines a spotlight energetically on the areas of our life that need our attention. Now, if you get into astrology, the full moon, I mean, people may or may not care about this, but I think it's interesting. The full moon will happen in the night sky in a particular sign. So each full moon has its own flavor. So like we might have a full moon in Taurus, which is really about the body and our relationship with physicality and sensuality. And then Taurus will fall in a specific house in your chart, and then you can know what it is for you. But just like high level full moons shine a light on that which has been hidden previously.
Yeah.
So we can get real agitated.
Wow.
And there's really interesting data that there are more hospital visits during a full moon, there are more accidents during a full moon, and there are more crimes committed during a full moon. So the shadow is brought to light during the full moon.
Finally, the waning moon. I just went introspective and I did some inner child work.
That's perfect.
What's happening in the waning?
Well done. So the waning moon is moving from, full back to new. So it's the decrescendo of the lunar cycle. It is the time that is akin to the energy of autumn or the luteal phase in the menstrual cycle. So it's the time to begin to turn within, cross our T's, dot our I's, close the office door, get our projects over the finish line. Just really, it's not a social time. It is like the time between, October and the end of the year when things get darker, quieter, and we feel called to more stillness. We are essentially preparing, clearing the way, clearing the decks for the time when we go back into the darkness, into the new moon, where we will then sit again and ask, what is the best use of my creative energy and my life force in this upcoming cycle?
So here's the deal. I didn't know any of this. I had no idea what the phase of the moon was. I just literally went back to look at what was.
Yeah.
I can imagine that if I don't know that this is going to happen and I'm not preparing myself for each phase, I'm going to be fighting it because I consider myself to be a type A person who likes to get things done, who if I'm not being productive, then I'm not doing anything, right? So what do you think would happen if women started planning their activities every month based on their cycle?
Oh, well, I know what happens.
Tell us.
They don't feel crazy, number one, because the world has told women that because we are different over 4 phases over the month, that there's something wrong with us because we are designed for a 28-ish day hormonal cycle, whereas the world is designed for the testosterone dominant hormonal cycle, which is 24 hours. That is because we live in a patriarchy. So actually, when we organize ourselves according to how we are, there's just a lot less friction. We get better momentum. Life is just easier. Our intuition gets stronger. Many physical symptoms, especially those around our cycles, will diminish or be eliminated because there is so much wasted energy pushing up against and trying to be different as opposed to be different than what we are, as opposed to utilizing how we are as the superpower that it is.
So I'm just going to say I'm going to start tracking in my journal what the moon cycle
I love that.
is. I'm just going to start doing that and start being more intentional about it. So here's where we're going to take a turn a little bit. And we're going to bring this all back. So we're going to land this plane. I promise you. So you wrote a book before this one, right? You wrote a book called Money, a Love Story. Can you please just tell us, why did you write this book?
I got myself into a boatload of credit card debt in my early 20s. I was a chronic financial avoider. I was disorganized AF. I was just pretty good at making money, actually, but the management, I just was so avoidant. And I tried listening to the personal finance experts. Like, I knew I was supposed to be better at this. I'm really smart. I went to an Ivy League school. Like, I was like, what is wrong with me? Why does it seem that everyone else can get it together with this? And I can't. Mm-hmm. And it was because so many layers. But ultimately, what I felt like was the world of personal finance felt very shame-based and very focused on like, you need to be, you need to be responsible. You need to essentially deprive yourself in order to hit all your financial goals. It requires discipline. Da, da, da. And it was like so shame-based. And also, it just was like not fun and not sexy at all. And I just didn't want to do it like that. And so I created my own approach to have a better relationship with money, to pay off my debt, to experience more abundance. And the missing ingredient in all the places I had looked was really the ingredient of love, specifically self-love. And so I started to incorporate my financial awareness and my financial well-being as part of my self-care, as opposed to like this other thing over there that's like when I have to be a grown up and it's adulting and it sucks and it's just the way it is, right? Like we talk about, oh, adulting is hard and like, da, 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 da. And I was like, yeah, but I don't have any trouble doing things that I can make fun. So what if I made this fun and pleasurable? What if I made it an extension of loving myself? What if taking great care of my money became a practical way I could actually take great care of myself? So in 6 months, I was able to triple my income, double my savings, pay off all of my debt. And it wasn't because I like married somebody who had a lot of money. I didn't have a windfall of any kind. I didn't get an inheritance. None of those things happened. There's nothing wrong with those things. They're wonderful. They just weren't my story. But I was able to really clean up my financial life very quickly. And so once I had done that, that became the curriculum for my original course, the Money Love course, and then became the basis for the Money Love Story, the book.
When people start an entrepreneurial journey, they are thinking, well, I need to build this brand that is going to be like, I'm going to be known for this one thing. And I want you, you laugh. I want to know, when you wrote that book, and this is like just purely like business for like the businessy folks out there who are like, wait, you wrote a book about money? And then you wrote a book about periods? And then you wrote a book about periods? Like, can you please tell me, like, why? What was going through your mind? What was that progression from that topic to this one?
I write about what I learn about, and I write about what the lessons that I've learned that I think would be helpful to other people. And sometimes they're related to the previous topic, and sometimes they aren't. Interestingly, a decade later, I'm like not only, but I'm talking about money again, right, all the time. And so this is not here's the deal. From a business perspective, I do think you should be known for one thing. I just have never managed to whittle it down like that. And so if anybody listening is not good at whittling it down to one thing, let me be evidence that you can be you and it will be fine.
It's going to be okay.
Now, for the record though, I did talk about money for like a good long chunk of time, certainly long enough to get a book deal. And then I pivoted specifically around time and energy management. But at the end of the day, it is the same conversation. It is a conversation about tapping into the place in which we all can experience a feeling of enough and abundance. Whether it's in a conversation about your time, your energy, or your money, it is the same thing. We are all just trying to break out of the lie of scarcity and access our abundance. And so it's the same thing.
What is the relationship between building wealth and doing less?
My definition of wealth is being able to do what we want to do with our actual most precious asset, which is our time. And so doing less of what doesn't matter allows us to have way more space and time for what does matter, which is the same thing as wealth.
Why is it important for women to build wealth and not just make money?
Because, I mean, there's a lot of data that women outlive men, number one. And because of the break for some women, if they choose to have children, there can be a gap in our earning years. So sometimes there's a bit of quote unquote catch up to do financially. And so it is really important that we build wealth, meaning getting our money to work for us so that at the point that we are able to or that we want to, we can step off the wheel of doing and be able to be work optional, which also allows us to devote ourselves to only the projects that really make our hearts sing, as opposed to having to make our decisions only based on what's going to bring in the money.
For anybody who's listening, and they are, like many people are, in a position where their spouses are the ones that manage the money. Their spouses are the ones that make the money decisions. Their spouses may be the main breadwinner. And they're hearing you speak and they're like, it sounds like building wealth is something I should be doing. What do you tell them? Where do they start?
I don't know. Like, do you want me to go dark or do you want me to go?
I want to know exactly what came to your mind. Tell me what that is.
The truth is that 50% of marriages end in divorce. Mm-hmm. So if you are giving all financial power and decisions away to your spouse, the likelihood of you ending up confused and alone in your financial decisions and possibly without access to resources is high. So that's like the part of me that just wants to be like, hello, right. Get in the game. And then from a more like, nurturing, loving place.
But what you said is totally
perhaps
true.
I've terrified you.
It happens.
Now come closer. Like it does happen. And it's common.
Yeah.
It's common. And even if I'm going to assume everyone listening has a glorious marriage that is going to go on forever, but only forever, meaning until one of you dies. Yeah. The likelihood is if you are married to a man, he will die first. Mm. And so what are you going to do then? It is very, okay. Oh, also, here's good news data-wise. Women naturally are better investors. We get better returns. Women naturally are really good with money. Like we just are. And when women have resources, when there's more money in the hands of women, everybody gets their needs taken care of. What we see is when women are in leadership in companies, the productivity of the company increases dramatically. The bottom line, the profits increase. Everything is better when women are in the seats of decision making, not at the exclusion of men, but just at the table together, right? I'm not talking about a matriarchy. I am talking about like we need to be in the room. And if that means in the room at your kitchen table doing the finances, we need to be making these decisions together. Money, sex, and power are related. They are the three energies that impact our second chakra, which is where our reproductive organs are. So now we're back at the uterus.
Back on the periods.
Back on periods. And so understanding that our financial awareness, our financial literacy, our financial empowerment is deeply connected to our power, meaning our ability to create what we want to create in the world. I'm not talking about power over. I'm talking about agency and the ability to create a more beautiful world. And so there is nothing that will replace understanding where your money is, understanding where it's going, understanding where it is coming from, how it's going to grow, and really being in charge of those decisions in partnership also can be incredible for marriages. The number of people who take my course, Relax Money, and tell me that their marriage is like hotter and more connected now that they're on the same page financially. I mean, there's probably going to start being like Relax Money babies as a result. Because people are just like having more sex and they're feeling more connected and making more money.
It's just so funny because you just answered like my next three questions in like bam, bam, bam. I'm like, she's just answering all of my questions. My next question was, what is relaxed money?
Oh, well, so Relax Money is a program that I teach, but what it means is, I'll try to make this story quick.
Please.
In 2021, my husband got really, really ill for the second time with a chronic illness that came back with a vengeance, with really like no known cause, no known, cure. It was really hard. He lost 40 pounds in a month. He was really unable to function at all. And at the time, it was during the pandemic, we had come to Florida suddenly, unexpectedly. I felt like we were paying for two lives at the same time. We still had our life in Maine. We were here for a number of reasons. And I felt so much financial pressure because now my husband was down for the count. He's also my business partner. Mm-hmm. So I was like responsible for running the company, parenting our two children, and also, making the money. And like, it was awful. And this had happened before. This wasn't the first time it had happened. So I was extra stressed out and like kind of traumatized from the previous times. Right. And I remember sitting down with our couples therapist. We were on Zoom, and our couples therapist said, okay, Kate, because I was also deeply resentful of my husband, which is awful because he was sick. It's not like he chose this, but I was like, but your soul did. I mean, I was in a bitter place. It was not sexy. And so, just like my husband's fine now, just so we all know.
Good.
Great. Marriage is great. This is like several years ago. So I sat down. David, our therapist, was like, okay, Kate, I want you to close your eyes and imagine now that Mike has just come home and he's like, babe, I've just made $10 million. So you don't need to work. And also you can literally just do whatever you want. And David was like, now tell me what is happening inside you as you hear that news. And the fascinating thing about our bodies is our bodies don't have any sense of time. Mm-hmm. So when we imagine things, and all this data is in like all the high performing Olympic athletes who use visualization to improve their performance, this stuff works. Like you can just tell what's going on in your system when you do exercises like this. So what's going on in there? And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. What's happening inside me is that as I'm imagining this, I feel like flatlined in terms of I feel kind of dead inside. And I was shocked because of course I would assume like, oh, your husband comes home, he's just $10 million, feeling so excited, feeling so relieved, feeling whatever. And instead I felt dead. And so what I realized over the course of a little bit of time was I had been using basically my entire life adrenaline and pressure as my fuel source to do anything, to create, to run our business, to make money, whatever. And I realized like also at the time I got my own blood work back from my doctor. And he said, Kate, if you don't change something, you are going to get really sick. Like my numbers were not good. And I was like, shit, my kids cannot have two sick parents at the same time. Yeah. I have to change the way I am living. And so I shifted from thinking I need to wait until we have reached a certain amount of income or we have a certain something external, measure of success external, before I can relax. And I realized I just have to relax now and move from that place and switch from pressure to really joy and relaxation as my fuel source. And there's much more to that story, but the long and the short of it is I changed the way I was doing everything and started to really heal my nervous system and realize the degree to which not only my nervous system, but all of our nervous systems are super jacked up, and how that repels money from our lives and repels abundance from our lives because we have such a fundamental sense of constriction and lack of safety around money. And it's so rooted in scarcity. And so there was a lot of healing I did there. And so as a result of that, I was like, whoa, I can feel this good and hit our financial goals. I don't have to work from a place of anxiety, pressure, adrenaline, stress. Like there's another option. And it was so wild. Like the more I relaxed, the more I sensed into safety, the more I gave myself permission to feel the way and found ways to feel the way I wanted to feel now, the easier our launches got, the bigger our launches got. And yet I was so less detached to those things because I already had what I wanted, which was that sense that everything was okay now, even when externally I didn't always have the evidence that that was the case.
How do you even get to that place? Because if you are, like you said, running on adrenaline, if you're basically fighting fires all the time, and that is your life because your husband is sick, or, you know, in my case, my husband works a job that is extremely demanding. He is on call for so much of the time. Add insomnia to that. The man is a zombie for like weeks at a time. And I mean, it's just me. So how do you even start to find relaxation when you feel like you're surrounded by chaos?
Well, we start with healing our nervous systems. So our nervous systems are developed, their set points are developed based on the environment energetically in our childhood, in our upbringing. So if you think about like what it was like when you were growing up, was it a sense of safety and nurturing and calm? Was it chaos? Was it conflict? Was it stress? Was it pressure? What was the general vibe? So our nervous systems get a thermostat setting, and that thermostat setting is based on our childhood experiences, but the vibe of them, right? And so then our thermostat, our nervous system set point, our nervous system will always, it does not like the unfamiliar. Anything that is unfamiliar is designated as unsafe according to our nervous system, which is responsible for the vast majority of our unconscious, which is responsible for the vast majority of our behavior, which is responsible for our results, right? Like right. We get in life a reflection of what's happening on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so we need to learn to change the thermostat setting so that we stop recreating the exact same environment that we had in our childhood, because that's what our body thinks is safe, because it's what our body knows. But actually, most of our desires, everything we want, is outside of the realm of the familiar. Otherwise, we wouldn't want it because we would already have it. And so, but unconsciously, unfortunately, we are wired to avoid the unfamiliar at all costs, even if it's what we think we want on a cognitive level. And so going after our desires, creating a level of calm in our lives, creating abundance, having a business that we want, having a loving relationship, whatever it is, like all of that has to start with the body first. And, you know, there's a million different practices that I teach and we practice, and there's layering, and there's neuroanatomy. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that we can do to rewire in a specific, safe way so that you literally find yourself in a new reality that you couldn't have orchestrated from a mental perspective.
Right.
It's not mindset work. It's somatic, physiological rewiring.
Yeah. What would that look like if you can give me an example of like in a situation, mm-hmm. right? Suppose that, you know, if I take my situation, I'm taking care of 2 kids, I'm running this business, I'm getting called from the school because one of the kids is sick, and because it's a half day, or because mm-hmm. the bus is late, and right. my husband hasn't slept for 3 days. So chaos.
Yeah.
Working on this, you know, psychosomatic responses, right? what would my day look like without doing this work? I'm very familiar with what that looks like. Versus doing this work. How do you see me handling a situation differently when I have done that kind of work?
Yeah. So for example, I'm super familiar with the school calling and having like a very important day of work
It's insane.
and just being like, oh, I'm literally not going to be able to do 95% of what I
Why
planned
is
today.
this a thing? Why is this our life?
And
But it
now
is.
my child is screaming and crying and asking me for 35 snacks and won't leave me alone and is like crawling up my butt, right?
Right.
So
I'm so
and
glad
I'm
that you
also
understand what I'm
already
talking about.
tired and like there's no groceries and there's nothing for dinner and like yes. So
Don't
familiar.
ask me what's for dinner, because that is those
Yes.
are the worst
Yes.
words in the English language, is what's for dinner.
So our external environment does not need to shift in order for our reality to shift.
Right.
And what can happen on a day like that, if you are understanding how to work with your nervous system, is that let's say like you do end up with an hour that you can get something done. If you're dysregulated, meaning your nervous system is in fight, flight, freeze, or flop, that hour comes along and you end up spending it scrolling Instagram or just being so distracted you can't get any traction because you're dysregulated, because you don't know how to metabolize the stress. So you're just like, right?
Right.
And so the day becomes like it's a bit in the toilet, right? Like the day is a wash. But if we are regulated, we actually are able to have our full capacity for conscious thought, decision making, problem solving, prioritization, really understanding and being able to look at the big picture and say, oh, this is what matters. This doesn't. I have resources. I am calm. We have the capacity to remember, oh, yeah, my friend Sue down the block told me that if I ever needed support, I could call her. I'm going to go ahead and call Sue right now and send my kids down the street. Like what happens is when our threat bucket is overflowing, which you are describing, when my husband was sick, that was absolutely where I was every single day, we lose our ability to be smart. We cannot, our body is in survival mode. We have less cerebrospinal fluid that flows to our brain. We literally cannot think straight. We get blinders on. All of our blood is going to our extremities because our survival system has taken over and is preparing us for flight or fight. There's no saber-toothed tiger chasing us though. Like that's not what's happening right now. Those skills of fight and flight are not serving us in our modern day lives. Like when we get an email from Bob in accounting that pisses us off or whatever, right? And so what we can do is we can learn to toggle ourselves back into a parasympathetic nervous system response where we are calm, where we have access to our rest, digest, tend, and befriend capacity, which allows us to be brilliant, to have access to our full creative potential and to our full ability to prioritize and do the 20% that gets us 80% of the results. So that day can be a total win because honestly, most of us are doing a bunch of stuff all day that does not get us results anyway. And we don't need, this data is all in my book, Do Less, but like, we don't need to be working the 8-hour workday, the 40-hour work week is arbitrary. It is not based on the data of what it takes to move the needle for any of us.
Right. This has been amazing. Just hearing that your body matters, right? Like I think that this is what I'm taking away from this entire conversation is your body matters. This is not success, all your goals, your accomplishments is not something you just push through because you're smarter or because you have this right strategy. It's like your body is either contributing or hindering you, right? So
and you can either use it or ignore it. And eventually, if you ignore it, your body will get you to pay attention.
So can you tell me, what is your big message for the world right now? There's a microphone. This is a platform. What do you want people to know?
You really just said it. Your body matters. And it is your greatest access point to your power.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you?
Of me? Well, there's something I don't ever think about. I mean, people think all sorts of things, and they're welcome to, because it has nothing to do with me. I don't know. I really don't know. Really don't know. That's a great question, but I don't know.
Totally fine.
Yeah.
So if everybody who's listening right now had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have to do it in the next 24 hours, what would that thing be?
Take off your shoes. Go outside. Stand on the surface of the earth barefoot. Not on concrete, not on rubber, not on whatever, but like on the dirt or on grass or on the forest floor, and get yourself reconnected.
What does that do?
So many things.
I have actually heard of this, and I've never done it. Like,
what?
Definitely not recent memory.
Not on purpose.
Not on purpose.
So when we ground, so this is called grounding or earthing, it instantly reconnects our body to source, and physiologically it regulates our nervous system. So it does all the beautiful things. Your digestion improves, your immune function improves, your eyesight improves. You just are your respiration improves, the sexual response cycle improves. Like, physiologically, being regulated is the most powerful thing we can do. And it is also the most powerful thing we can do for our mind. And standing barefoot on the earth is just my favorite way to do it.
Kate Northrup, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this conversation. Can you please tell everybody where to go find you, where to follow you?
Yes. So on Instagram, at Kate Northrup is the best place, or over on my website, katenorthrup.com. I also have a weekly podcast called Plenty, where I help people to tap into that sense of having and being more than enough.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to put all those links below so everybody can access them. You have been amazing. Thank you for going through all of these places with us. This was a great conversation. Really, thank you.